This is Taking It to the Nub with Shirtless Mike.
And Boston Jimmy. And oh, by the way, Shirtless Mike, yeah, that's not him right there. My wife came down with, we hope it's just the flu, but for precautionary measures right now, we don't want anybody coming over the house. So today we have a really great show. Let me bring Mike in real quick. Here you go. Mike, come on in. So Mike's from the Herf Zone. We got a great show today, man. Mike, you met Luigi from CigarMedics for the first time down at the Great Smoke, and worked with him over the last year. Got introduced to him through Kevin Shahan. So tonight we have the man himself on the show, Luigi Lucente, and his team, yes, from CigarMedics. So let me go bring in Luigi Lucente. How are you?
What's going on, fellas?
Mike, what's up, Mike?
Not much.
What's everybody smoking?
I got a nice little Monte Cristo that I got on my honeymoon in Turks and Caicos.
Oh.
Nice.
Monty?
I'm smoking a Blue Line.
Nice.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a little blurry moving.
Speaking of Frontline Cigars, they gave us a shout out on their page. Mo, he gave us a shout out right before the show. So shout out to Mo from Frontline Cigars for shouting us out. I'm smoking a La Palina Rosado.
I'm smoking something that's been in my humidor for a while now, for well over a year. This is a Dominican Big League, a DBL 35th anniversary. Picked this up last year at his event down in the Dominican when he brings his retailers down. And he did a nice little tour of his factory, and part of the gift box was this. So time to light it up and have a good show. Luigi, introduce me to your team here. Who else do we have there?
You have Giovanni here, who you met at the show, and you also have Tom here in the background. Hi guys, how's it going?
Yo.
What are the and what do they do for you other than keep you out of trouble?
They can tell you.
I kind of been handling our Instagram account and our website a little bit, and conversating with some of our, answering any questions I get on Instagram, Facebook.
I'm trying to get the word out on the meter, educating people, trying to get in front of as many people as possible, answering questions, just day to day.
So let's talk about this meters. It is device. I learned about this, like I said, last year from Kevin Shahan, and you had sent me one, and I did a pretty detailed review on it. And being a fellow engineer, I had to dig a little deeper into some testing and run some test cases on it. And I discovered some things that people can read on that. What got you into wanting to make such a device to start with?
Well, first of all, I am an inventor, so I have 4 or 5 patents already besides running my business here. And since I was a casual smoker, I kind of neglected my humidor. You know, I don't really keep up like you do, Jimmy, and you have the big humidors. But I actually, and every time I wanted to smoke a cigar, I would go down the base with some buddies that come over and like, these things are dry, you know. So I didn't want to wait weeks and months for it to come back. So I worked on a way to bring the cigar back within minutes. I know you're probably going to rip on me, Jimmy, but it actually worked. And it worked so well that we didn't know how much moisture, because, you know, you got to be real careful with it. It's a delicate process. You got to make sure you don't burst the wrapper, and, you know, but it was working so well at the end that we didn't know how much moisture we were actually putting in the cigars. So we were going to go out and buy ourselves a fancy moisture meter, just like the ones you do when you're putting water in a pot. You know, they sell them at the Home Depot stores. You know, those ones that you put in a pot for $10. It shows you how much moisture is in your plant, you know. But looking on the internet, we found nothing. There was nothing out there, which to me is remarkable, because if you know how much cigar smokers go nuts over keeping the temperature and the humidity in their humidors. I mean, you know, how come there isn't anything that actually checks the humidity or moisture content in a cigar? And I mean, months of looking, and I still could not find anything. Came to the point where, well, maybe I should leave the rejuvenator alone and go into making a meter for cigars, you know. And I was intrigued by it, and I spent a lot of time and realized how little information there was in regard to moisture content versus relative humidity in cigars, and you know. So we did a lot of work on, you know, our own studies into calibration, and there's very little published into how much moisture actually goes into cigar tobacco and the relationship with humidity, and a lot of it is what's been written. I mean, you can find like university studies, and R.J. Reynolds and Philip Morris have their own studies on cigarette tobacco. But I spent about a year researching this and testing it, and we were very pleased with what we found out. But to take it one step further, you know, you can buy a moisture meter. You know, this is the one. This is the initial moisture meter that they actually sell these at the hardware stores. Now, carpenters use these, woodworkers use these, guys who install floors use this, because it's very important to make sure that there's a proper amount of moisture in a wood floor when you're installing it, or for guys that are in firewood, you know. So building contractors use these for drywall, you know. But the problem is, look how far the probes are and look how short they are, you know. So we had to modify the meter. We found a source that would work with us, and they completely recoded the meter. And in fact, you know, it was difficult enough to make sure that it was calibrated for tobacco, but it had to be done for cigar tobacco, which is a different class of tobacco than cigarette or burley tobacco. And then to take it one step further, you know, we figured, well, we got it right. We know how much moisture content is in a cigar, but who is going to know what 12% is? Who's going to know what 15% is? Nobody that has a humidor, I wouldn't say nobody, but most people don't know what that is, because everybody associates with the relative humidity in a humidor, you know, 65, 66, 70%. So then we had to take it that step further, because if we were going to sell this product, we wanted to make it affordable, and we wanted to give it to aficionados and everyday cigar smokers. And we wanted to make it sure that it was easy for them. You just push one button, put it in, and get a reading. So that's what prompted us to create the meter, and that's why we launched it first.
What did you figure out to be the average moisture content that a cigar should have for optimal smoking pleasure?
All right, this is a cool thing, you know, because everybody has the 70-70 rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we developed the meter, there's a lot of cool things that I personally learned, because I always thought, okay, we got to keep it at 70 and it burns, and it does taste good at 70. But one thing that happens when you're smoking a cigar, it doesn't matter if you're in Arizona or if you're in Florida or if you're in Canada or in the Yukon. The cigar builds moisture as you draw on it. So if it starts at 70, it will actually build moisture as you go. Now, you tapped a Lancero in the barrel when we talked a couple of weeks ago, right? Or
yes. Yeah, the other day.
At 99% in the barrel of that Lancero, right?
It was up there. It was like, 90+%. After about an inch and a half of burn, that barrel about a half inch above the burn line was, at 99%. So what is that telling me my moisture content got to?
So that tells you that tobacco inside that cigar is saturated. So when you start off at 70, your cigar has about 15% moisture content. And at 99%, that means that in that barrel, as you were smoking it, you were at about 30% moisture content. So at that point, that's as much moisture as the tobacco can absorb. That's max. So the air will still flow through that, but if you think about it, have you ever seen pictures of guys posting, especially in the wintertime, they get an exploded cigar, and they ask, what is it, you know? Well, a lot of times what happens is that tobacco gets so engorged with moisture, especially on a Connecticut, because it's so thin, it'll just split the wrapper, right? And especially up north. One of the other cool things that we've learned is that when you pull a cigar out of your humidor, the wrapper is also at whatever's in your humidor, correct? The wrapper, right? So what do you think, Jimmy, you've got a lot more experience than I do. Where do you get most of the flavor from your cigar?
Theory says the wrapper, bigger the ring gauge, the more the inside filler you're getting flavor from.
Right. So pretty much across the board, everybody concurs that the wrapper is what gives you the majority of the flavor in a cigar. Well, you and Mike don't have to worry about it because you live in Florida. But if you lived in Arizona or a northern tier state like you live in, indoors, as soon as you pull that cigar out of that humidor, within 5 minutes, that wrapper dries out. It acclimates to the environment that it's in. So that's another reason why you see sometimes people in the wintertime with exploding cigars. Because if you think of the wrapper dries out and the inside, the binder and filler engorge with moisture right behind the ember, and that's what gives you the explosion of the wrapper oftentimes. So that's one of the cool things that we've learned also, you know. Now you can't stop that buildup of moisture. Now you tested it by putting it in a microwave, right? Because cigars are hygroscopic, which means they absorb moisture from the atmosphere or the environment. So what happens is, as you pull air through the ember, the heat is what activates or changes the state of the moisture. That's why when you feel a cigar right behind the ember, it always feels a little squishy, right? That's the moisture changing state from either. It's almost like when you're cooking meat on a grill and you see the water come up, and the moisture that hits the ember actually turns into steam, you know. So that's something you can't change. So because of that, and knowing that the moisture always builds as you're smoking on it, that's what led me to start smoking cigars at a lower initial relative humidity. Just because knowing that as it builds, it's building from 62 on up instead of from 70 on up.
I think you saw me post the reading for my HumidiMeter the other day. I think it was like 72%.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had I mean, it didn't really explode per se, but there was like definitely some cracking on the wrapper. This one that I'm smoking checked out at 71%. I just got this week from Patrick Vivolo from La Polina, and it was 71%. I haven't had any cracking on it yet, but I definitely, I mean, now that I've been paying more attention, I could kind of, you know, see and track it. You know, I've been kind of doing my own experiments with it and just tracking it and stuff like that.
Perfect. I mean, Mike, you probably won't see a lot of wrapper cracking because your wrapper is always supple and moist because you guys live in Florida. The humidity is always in the 70s, you know. So
I mean, I don't see a whole lot. Every once in a while, though, I definitely get some, but not a whole lot.
Well, the only problem with smoking at 70 and over, like I said, it's going to build moisture. Sometimes I've noticed the flavors are a little bit more muted, and then it burns a little funnier, you know. But it's still smokable. I mean, it's just that to me it just tastes a little bit more muted. But what I've tended to do is I've like moved my range down to like 62 to 66% where I light it up on the foot. Now, when I say that, when you check the foot, be aware that the barrel and cap are always a little bit higher. So if you want to smoke a cigar at 70, you might want to tap the foot at around 66, 67, knowing that the back, you know what I mean? So.
And most of my cigars, you know, that I keep in my coolador, they run around like 64, 65%.
Perfect.
And I also had to keep track of, you know, once I got my HumidiMeter at the Great Smoke, I was keeping track on seeing which ones were ready because there's some that ran like real low, and it took a few weeks for them to, you know, acclimate to the right condition.
I met Jason Falkenberg at Great Smoke too, and Kevin Shahan handed me a Red Meat Lovers cigar. You know, I had Rudy test it. I told Rudy and I told Jason, tell me what you think of this cigar and what moisture or what relative humidity it is. And they both guessed 62 because it felt kind of hard. But we tapped it and it was 70. So you can't go based on feel and touch and, you know.
So when you mention the humidity factor, of, say, the moisture factor at 70%, you would say in around 15% moisture.
Right.
Right. So how did you calibrate this? How does this device get calibrated to know that if I'm reading 60%, am I talking a linear scale? Is it a logarithmic scale?
No, it's a curve. I can't tell you too much information, Jimmy, because that's where the patent comes in.
Mm-hmm.
The patent attorney wanted me to publish that, but I really didn't feel comfortable because that's really the crux of the whole patent, you know. So it is not a linear scale; it is a curved scale. So
Okay.
You know.
All right. So, but you have tested this. You have and I've tested it too. For everybody to understand, I've tested this with different humidity factors to see where it came in, and it was fairly accurate to say that if I'm at a 69% Bovita pack in a desktop humidor, it was reading 69%. If I got my home humidor set at, say, 65%, it would read close to 65.
One of the things we put in our instructions for a safety reason is to actually tell people to put it in the cigar and then lay it on a table. But to get better readings, we usually let the cigar like sit off like a plank because it puts a little bit of pressure on the cigar. The problem is sometimes if you have a looser pack cigar, you might have to press top and bottom a little bit just to get a better reading. Now, you don't always have to do that, but the foot is always a little looser than the cap. You never have to do that with the cap, nor do you want to. But with the foot, if you're getting a low reading, and if you're getting low, like this is a Dom Pepin, I'm getting about 65% on it. But if you see it drop down, there's nothing wrong with giving it a little gentle squeeze, and you don't want to bend it this way because you'll bend the prongs. But I would do it like top and bottom, just give it a little gentle squeeze like this to get a reading. But remember again, if you do get a low reading on a foot, it's not really indicative of what the cigar is at in the rest of the cigar. The barrel and the cap are always a few points higher. So when you check a foot, it's at 62. Assume that the rest of the cigar is at 65. Now I know that because I've tested hundreds of cigars.
Yeah, I get a lot of questions about the humidimeter asking, you know, I've had cigars in my humidor for a couple weeks and I'm always getting readings in between, you know, 58 and 61. And that's usually on the foot. So the first thing I would tell them is to try to gently squeeze it like Luigi just said. And to make sure that you're getting good contact with the tobacco. And then also try the cap if you're ready to smoke the cigar, because it's closed off at the cap end and it holds the moisture in the cigar.
The only time where you'll actually see the cap lower that we've noticed is that when you have a cigar that's super dry that you put in your humidor, and Jimmy, you pointed this out, you know, most of the moisture actually comes in through the foot. You know, a very large percentage of the moisture comes in through the foot. It just wicks in through the foot. So when you've got a cigar that's 33%, you put it in your humidor, remember most of the moisture is coming in through the foot. So at that moment, as you're recharging it, the foot will usually check higher just because it's starting to work back toward the cap. At some point, you'll hit equalization, and then it'll give back. You know, so
you're an engineer, you're an inventor, you're a cigar smoker now.
Yep.
Any other ideas?
Yeah, actually, I do. We've worked with Kevin, and we're gonna talk about this a little bit. Yeah, we have this scissor stand that actually folds flat. It's actually a cigar stand that Kevin sells. He's our lone retailer right now.
Okay.
It says it's a stainless steel stand that folds flat, and you can put right in your pocket. The plates don't come apart. You can put it in your purse. You can bring it to your lounge.
I got something here that I kind of want. You know, I don't have a whole lot of questions. I like to listen and learn, but you know, this is something that's been brought up to me recently. You know, I've had a few people. They're like, "Oh, the humidimeter is gimmicky and blah blah blah," and I'm like, "Okay, look, I understand that it's, you know, that it's not absolutely necessary, but hey, it's something I personally found it useful ever since you handed it to me. I've been using it every single day, you know, without fail, you know, every day. And what do you say to the haters out there who try to down talk it, saying it's gimmicky?
You can't really please everybody.
You know, Mike, I gave you my personal humidimeter. I was kind of shocked to see you. I knew I would see Jimmy there. So I gave you my personal humidimeter. I didn't have one. So, you know what, Mike? Cigar smoking was around before this humidimeter came along, and it'll probably be around even after this is gone one day. Who knows, you know? It's just another tool to help people. You know, when you get cigars online, you know, and you don't know where they came from. You don't know how they were stored.
You don't know how long it took, like it was in transit for.
Well, you know, I mean, think about it. When you smoke a cigar, and I'm sure it's happened to Jimmy, and it's happened to me, you know, you feel a cigar, you think it's hard, you think you got to store it a little more. You know, that's why we have our motto: know when to hold them, know when to smoke them. You know, now what I do with it is I pull one out of the humidor. If it doesn't fall within that 62 to 66 range, I'm parking it back in the humidor, or I'm dry boxing it. You know, because I already know where my range is. You know, because I've smoked cigars that, man, you just don't. It's too muted. I don't get what people are talking about. Or I've smoked ones that are probably too dry. They're bitter and they're not burning right, you know. So this to me is just something to help enhance my experience. I put so much time, we all did, into this project. It's not just some tool that we just threw on the market just to make a quick buck. We don't make as much as you might think on this, but I wanted to make it affordable. We did for everybody, you know what I mean? And the haters, a lot of times we go on Facebook, they're guys that don't even have it. They don't even have one. They don't see
Exactly.
And we're not gonna, you know, we're not gonna please everybody. If people think that they can tell by the way they roll it or the way they smell it, that's fine. We're not trying to, you know, I believe me, the first couple of months, these guys will tell you, you know, because of all the effort I put into this, the comments that I saw on Facebook. I mean, I was really.
We had to calm him down a little bit,
Yeah.
a couple of times.
How many engineering hours did you put in on this?
Oh, you don't want to know, Jimmy.
No, I'm going to jump in a little bit here for the gimmick question. Honestly, when we get those comments, and you know what, we haven't been seeing as much when it first came up.
Yeah.
We've been seeing a lot more when it first came to market. But if you're going to spend $2 on a cigar, $20 on a cigar, $100 on a cigar, the cigar is meant to be smoked and enjoyed at a certain humidity. If you're going to put your hard-earned money into that cigar and smoke it when it's supposed to be smoked, I personally, not because it's my product, our product, I personally don't think anybody should smoke it without testing it first.
Well,
Exactly.
look at you guys. Mike hasn't been to Nicaragua or anything. Have you, Mike? You know, you see the.
I haven't. No, Boston Jimmy has. I have not yet.
When you see the care that goes into making this, right? You know, all the hands. You talk about all the hands that touch it and how crazy they are about. They do draw testing on there. And if we get that cigar and we smoke it, and let's say 47%, we're doing ourselves a disservice and the guy who rolled that blend, because now we're going to have a bad experience. We're going to badmouth it because we didn't smoke it at the right level. You know what I mean?
And it helps me a lot, you know, from a reviewing perspective. I don't want to review a cigar that reads low because I'm being disingenuous to all of that craft that went into it. So this at least tells me I'm in the range. It helps me also rotate things in my humidor because I find stuff that's in the back of the humidor on the bottom that tends to be a little drier than the one at the top. And I move things around in my humidor. I go in there and I don't stab every one of them, but I'll go in an area and say, okay, stab a few, do a sample. But, hey, you know what? These look like they need to be moved, and I move them around and keep adjusting my rotation of my cigars. And it's helped me in maintaining my valuable possessions, right? That, you know, when you look at my humidor, it's like, you know, I got thousands of dollars worth of cigars sitting in the humidor. Have you done any study, the temperature versus the humidity?
Yeah, actually, we have, and temperature does affect relative humidity, as you know. So what we did was we based on our humidimeter at a 70-degree baseline temperature, because that seems like an average temperature that people smoke at. So it does affect it by a couple percent. So good question. The temperature does affect the relative humidity, because at the end of the day, this is not a hygrometer. This does not have to be calibrated like a hygrometer. A hygrometer has to be calibrated because of how it operates. I mean, this is actually, if anybody's used the fluke meter, you don't have to calibrate those that often. So this is just checking electrical resistance between 2 points. So it's all electrically tuned out of the factory, but we did introduce a calibration tool that when you poke it, it checks 70% for the people who want to make sure that it's working properly. So,
Yeah, I was going to say the battery. So now
it has a battery indicator on it, Jimmy. We've let units go down to where the battery is almost dead, and the unit still checks properly. Just so you know, it has a battery symbol on there when you see your batteries go down.
Okay.
The unit does not get affected by the battery being low. Just so you know, because I've actually used it down to the point where the battery is almost dead, and the readings were identical to the ones that I had with a fresh battery. So, great question.
That doesn't necessarily, because I had a question just a couple days ago saying that they don't keep their room temperature at 70. Sometimes it's 67 or 74 or whatever. It's not going to affect it significantly, wouldn't you say, Luke?
Right, very, very little. Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be 70 degrees in order to get an accurate reading.
Yeah. When you did the microwave and the refrigerator test, right?
Mm-hmm.
You saw how temperature affects it.
Oh yeah, I put a cigar in a freezer, right? Put it in the freezer, and it wasn't in the freezer for very long. It was in the freezer for like maybe an hour.
Right.
That humidity went.
Yeah, but you noticed when it came back, it came right back to where it was before, correct?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And that's that's just science. Science is a wonderful topic.
Good. Mike, any other questions or observations you had about it?
There's one observation. There's that asylum that I got at the Great Smoke. That is, it's still not even ready to smoke. Every few days, ever since I put it in my cooler door, I stab it, every so often just to see. And it's slowly kind of climbing up or whatever. I don't know if it has to do with the size of the cigar or the wrapper.
Oh,
No, that's one thing we've learned in testing is it could take like up to months to bring your cigar to equilibrium.
So that's like what is that, a 60 ringer, Mike?
I don't know what the ring. I think it might. I don't think it's a 60 ring gauge. It might be close, but
it's the big
one. Really long. Really, I forgot. I don't even know what they call that size because it's like a horse dick.
Yeah, it's big. All right. And when you first stabbed it, and I actually should try mine. When you first stabbed it, what were you reading?
It was like down in the 50s, like something like 55%.
Right.
And now it's like just now getting almost like 59%.
Is it in cellophane? Is it in cellophane?
No, it's not in cellophane.
Okay, so
we get a lot of questions about that as well.
You brought up a really good point. The problem is, I think you talked about haters. Well, why do you need it? Because I think people think that they pull it out of this box, this gauge or this gauge inside checks 70, so the cigar's got to be 70, right? Well, when you put a can of Coke or Pepsi in a refrigerator, the next day it's cold, right? It's exactly what the refrigerator is. When you put a cigar in a humidor, if that cigar, you got an asylum in cellophane, let's say it's 60 ring, 660 or 770, whatever it is, in cellophane, and it checks 37, 40%, that cigar will need at least 3 months to acclimate, 3 months. So, you got guys online saying, well, I keep mine for 2 weeks. Well, how do you know? How do you know? I mean, yeah, does that work for you? Great. But every cigar is different. If you have a lot of Ligero in your cigar, it's going to take longer because it's a thicker leaf. Did you ever check the cap on it?
Yeah, I checked the cap. It was like it was kind of like in the low 60s.
Yeah. It's getting there. It just takes a little bit longer.
I think it was like 60 or 61%.
Yeah. Hey,
So that's an interesting vitola because, like he says, it's a really long vitola. It's like an A. It's the length of what I would consider like an A size, but it's not as narrow as an A size, right? If you're familiar with like the Drew Estate A's, right? So it's big, and it's got a little more girth to it. So I don't know. I mean, that's a very interesting question. I will have to check mine because I did not check mine. It's just been sitting in my humidor. So I have to check to see how that works out. And it could be, that the longer they are, to get that equalized humidity because it's breathing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just another tool, and that's why we didn't introduce this at a price that's so, God forbid, expensive, that $100, and that's another thing, people have seen Steve Saka's meter. He's got a $3,000 moisture meter. So because of that, they think that, oh, well, yours is $30. It's 100 times less more. How good can it be? Well, I tell people, if somebody wanted to contract me to build them a meter like this, you know how many thousands of dollars I'd have to charge? Because if you think about it, if you look at Steve Saka's meter, there's not $3,000 worth of componentry inside that meter. It's just a couple of probes and
there's not a lot of people using it.
But the problem is when that company makes that meter, they're making 5 or 10 because they're making it for cigar rollers. They're making it for guys that want it for inspection purposes, not for the average Joe. But, so they're only making 5 or 10 at a time. We're making thousands of these or selling thousands. So we're taking my time and dividing it. And I don't even know if we're charging for my time.
Yeah. So this is priced out at $29.95. You can order these directly from the company at www.cigarmedics.com, as you see on the sign behind them. What I want to do here is kind of shift gears a little bit on the show. We've got about 15 or so more minutes. So we're just going to roll on with this show and talk about a couple of things to wrap stuff up. You can stay on if you want to listen and be part of the exchange. It would be fun. So we'll want to talk a little bit about some of the news that's hit the cigar scene over the last week. First thing that was really interesting is the lawsuit that we have on pending right now that we've been appealing for the substantial equivalence. The courts have postponed that hearing because of the coronavirus. So if anybody thinks coronavirus isn't affecting the cigar industry, it has definitely affected the cigar industry. It's affected me here because we're sitting here with shirtless Mike, and actually on a screen because my wife doesn't want anybody over right now. But that's one thing that was in the news. The other interesting news nugget that I found is we raised the federal age for tobacco purchases to 21, and that's effective all across the United States. But what I'm finding interesting is that there's these little news articles that are coming out that different states and different municipalities are pushing through bills in their local communities or their state governments to pass a law that says to purchase tobacco, you got to be 21. I guess I don't understand how legislature works. As a federal law says you got to be 21, do you need a state law that says it too? But all these states are out there trying to pass laws to say minimum 21 for any tobacco or vape product on the market. Just find that interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
Oh.
Go ahead.
I mean, I know this is a little off topic, but we talked about it the last couple weeks of the show. But so, as you know, Jimmy, I work, doing political surveys and market research and all that. Well, I was working on a survey this week calling New York, and it was about the banning of, e-cigs and vapes and flavored tobacco, and, asking people's opinions on that. Now, the survey was a bit biased in a way, but it was interesting.
So what was the pulse you got out of that? What was the end pulse?
It was anti. It was anti. They were pro banning it, so they wanted to get people's opinions. Just from the vibe that I got based on the questions, they had questions. They would say, basically asking if it's important to, that kids, that you ban it so that kids won't get access to it. But then, there's one of the final questions just that takes the kids out of the equation. And I talked to people that were like, you know what? Yeah, if it were, the kids were, it was about the kids not being able to access, this stuff, that's fine. But adults should be able to do what they want to do. So, I mean,
interesting.
And they also was doing a lot of race baiting as well. They were talking about the whole menthol thing because it targets African Americans, and if they ban it, then it could be a way to for the cops to harass, just another way for the cops to harass African Americans and stuff like that. So it was very biased and race baiting, and I had to keep a straight face through the whole thing. Imagine that.
What was the survey about, Mike?
It was about the banning of e-cigs, vapes, and flavored tobacco.
Oh.
About the bill that's going on in the Senate right now, that passed through Congress, going on in the Senate.
Is that going to affect the Drew Estate cigars?
Well, we don't know that answer yet. I would think that Drew Estate, Rocky Patel, two big flavored cigar companies, Oliva with their nubs. These companies have some deep pockets, and I think they will go at this possibly on their own, to say if they're not going to get anybody else to jump on board, they'll jump on it. They're going to fight that because it's, there's a predicate here, right? I mean, this has been in the market a long time, and it's not like vape that just came into the market. So there's a lot of argument for that. I mean, the government can do whatever the government wants to do, but in the end, they still have to look at the economic impact to a business. You can't do regulations to destroy businesses.
You were at the TPE, correct?
Yes, I was.
Wasn't there a lot of e-cigarette companies represented there?
There's a plethora of e-cigarettes and CBD companies there.
Well, isn't the premise behind this so that these flavors are what's bringing kids into it? It's not necessarily a tobacco fix.
Yeah. If you actually read the bill, and the other show we did the week, I was going through. I did a synopsis of the bill that was passed, and they called out very specific flavors, cherry, grape, right? Very specific. They
right.
And so Drew Estate, their acid cigars, not necessarily cherry and grape. Yeah, there's chocolate in one, right? But they use a lot of essential oils and stuff, and spices and things like that. You're getting out of it. You're getting all this floralness to it. So I don't know. This is a long drawn out process, and I just hope they don't kibosh that, because, like you said, that's a major part of a Drew Estate portfolio.
I'll be honest with you. My nephew, who's 23, when you and I started smoking, we didn't have access to these Nicaraguan blends. I mean, this is just I can't believe. I mean, I used to smoke Macanudos and Ashtons and Arturo Fuentes by the truckload, but nowadays, the flavors, so anyway, make a long story short, my nephew, I gave him a I think a Don 15 cigar, so next week I gave him an acid Cuba, right? he thought that thing was the best thing, you know. And I think a lot of people start off with those cigars because the aroma and they smell good. And I know they get ripped a lot, but those acid cigars like the Cuba Cuba, there's some just good ass tobacco behind that sweetness, right?
Yeah.
Not a swisher sweet, you know what I'm saying? So now he's addicted. Now he wants to start like developing his palate and smoking some of the stuff that I smoke, and you know, so it's a good entry point for people to get in because
They don't talk about this. They don't mention the fact that we've got, you know, flavored vodka, right? I mean, I am not a vodka guy.
Yeah.
And people tell me that a purist in the vodka world with their quadruple and quintuple distilled vodkas, that, oh man, you could taste the vodka taste. I said, what are you talking about? It tastes like alcohol. I don't taste anything in vodka.
Right.
I said, oh no, you could taste, if it's a potato base, you could taste that. I'm like, get out. And then they come in with all of this flavored vodkas and you could, and flavored whiskeys, right? And you could sit there. I was watching TV the other night, and what do I see? I see a commercial for a flavored whiskey. And how is it that they can do that? And whiskey is so, spirits in general are so dangerous to the body, okay? And so dangerous to society that they can promote that and we can't. It's not a level playing field.
well, it's because they have a bigger lobby. I mean, they have deeper pockets, bigger companies. I mean, you know,
And you see that honey flavored whiskey a lot nowadays.
Yeah.
And the apple cider whiskey.
And you don't think that's not getting some young 15 to 16-year-old into drinking?
Yeah.
I mean, when I was a kid, it was pretty common at the dinner table when you turn like 13 or 14 years old that you might have had a sip of wine or a little half a juice glass of beer that you right? And you were like, okay, that's, you know, so it was, you know, beer, simple beer, you know, Schaefer, Rheingold, things like that back in the day, right? Or, you know, a little wine, a little table wine. But when I first tasted whiskey, I was like, God, that is awful, right? I mean, I was like, why would anybody drink this?
Yeah, I know.
And it took me, you know, a number of years. And then eventually, what'd you do? You took vodka and you put vodka in juice and you drank that, right?
Right.
Or you found somebody with rum and you put rum in the Coke and it was the way it was. And then you eventually got yourself to whiskey. And then you eventually migrated into, okay, first time you're really going to start sipping whiskey and your palate now is starting to pick it up. And it was a factor. But that's the way it was and still is. That's what's going on the spirit side of the house. And this is just another adult product.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Well, hopefully a company like Drew Estate or some of the big boys can exercise their weight a little bit. And, you know, I asked Rudy at the Great Smoke, you know, if he's got Trump's ear, you know, and he promised me he does. So we'll see, you know.
Yeah, but he's had his ear for 3 years. And nothing has happened. You know, the president does not smoke or drink. Okay. So this is not on the radar screen. It's not here. You know, the industry, like you said, you know, just take the lobbying side of it as a measure of the size of the industry. This is a very, very small industry, and it doesn't mean a lot. And there's a lot of a lot of the employment is not here, right? It's in Central America,
right?
So he's not worried about this.
No, I
don't think he cares.
Yeah,
I'd be surprised. You know, I mean, he's got a few more months to make a decision, but we'll see what happens.
Well, it's you know what's great about these. And by the way, I am taking it to the nub right to the end of the show here. So
here we go.
Oh,
but it's just tobacco and water. That's all it is. It's tobacco and water. From what I understand, they don't even put pesticides or anything on there.
The thing that I've seen in the news is there's been some cigar shops in this country that have, they didn't close the shop. They just closed the shop for sitting in. Okay, you can come in and buy cigars and leave, but you can't sit there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, because let's be real, this is anywhere where there are people, when doing things, you're using a bathroom, you're sitting down on a couch, you cough, so you get some particulates fall on a couch you're sitting on or a chair. You sit there on the chair, your hands on the chair, you pick it up, you touch your face, boom, because that's the way it is, and that's what we got to be careful with right now.
I think the biggest reason why we're doing all this is because it would put such a demand and tax our healthcare system, because we got thousands of people showing up, looking for ventilators and needing care. These emergency rooms just can't handle it here.
My wife, she, like I said, the other day she wasn't feeling well, and she had a very, very low grade fever, but that fever went away, but she's been really achy and she's coughing all the time.
Yeah.
And she's really, really tired, and she would call the doctor, your regular family physician, right? I want to come in. They're like, you have a fever? No. Okay. Then just take some aspirin and just, whatever. Just no. And they, because if everybody did that, they would be overwhelmed, and you would have people in waiting rooms that a percentage of them probably are affected, and they'll affect others.
Yeah.
So we need to manage this, and I think we are. I think we're finally getting on top of it.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah.
And it's some people talk about it all day long.
Hey, we should be like 6 feet apart. What are we doing over here?
Yeah, exactly. You should be 6 feet apart.
We're doing the chicken wing nowadays. It's like,
That's it. Doing this. How you doing? But yeah, so that's the other thing I noticed, that there were some shops that have addressed the issue, because they don't want to. You don't want to put other people in danger. You don't. Even though if you don't subscribe to any of this and just say it's a nothing thing, that's fine. But you could contract it, and by just going around, affect other people's lives.
You know what, Jimmy? It's cool because we're Italian, and we actually we have relatives in Italy, and we sympathize for what they're going through right now, and maybe they waited too long. But what's cool is that last couple of days we've seen videos of people in Italy, like from their balconies, like singing songs in Sicily and throughout the whole, one guy's
Yeah, I saw that.
That kind of neat, So maybe something good will come of this, from people spending more time with their families and getting back to the roots. I mean, I hate, it's sad to say, that we have to do all this, but
We have an attack on the human race, and that's what this right now is. We all kind of come together. We kind of share stories.
Yep.
We help each other every way we can. We support, the communities come together. Businesses come together to figure out, especially medical side.
Yep.
Everybody, the researchers all work together around the globe. And when it's all said and done and it's all over and this thing's gone, and it will be gone.
Right.
And it goes back to like that, what's that comedian with the puppet? I'll kill you. But that's what it comes back to, right? Then it comes back to like, okay, we forget all of this. Okay, it's behind us. Now we just yell and scream at each other. Okay, and start the hatred again.
And you know what's great about cigars? For me, I don't have any hobbies, but when 3 o'clock rolls around over here after a tough day, this little thing right here is an escape for me, and especially now that we can't watch sports and do other things and go to movies, and this is a cool little escape that we still can go to, and it's enjoyment, and it's led me to meet guys like yourself and Mike, and just a lot of cool people, and I had a great time at the Great Smoke, and I met Kevin and Jessica, and I met yourself, and I said I was really surprised, and it was nice to meet Mike because I read some of his articles, and for me to like, that's Mike. Oh my God, Mike's here. So,
Man,
Yeah,
I
you
was
wanna
really
do
surprised that you're a fan of what I do. So it was really, it humbled me greatly. I'm like, wow, the inventor of this great product, he reads my stuff.
Yeah.
So speaking about Mike Holmes, or Shirtless Mike, I have this here for two reasons. One, because Mike's not sitting next to me, but he is. He's kind of just, there's Mike. But Mike, tell us about the shirt.
Yeah, so they're not public just yet. I ordered a very small amount to get to some people, and then once I start selling them, I'm still gonna hook a few people up, especially y'all. But I had to make my list, and it was rough for the first round. But I try to get the local folks and just a few other people out of town. But I'm gonna be selling these very soon because the irony of me always being shirtless, I figured I would have a shirt that says Team Shirtless Mike, because the irony gets people talking and all that. So that's pretty much why I did it. And, it's cool to have some swag. Yeah. And then that way people could wear it and I can have the Shirtless Mike Army.
Did you put a price tag on it yet?
I've adjusted the price several times, so it's going to be between $18 and $20 once they're public.
Right.
So it'll be it'll be basically, I'll have like a couple week time period once everybody has their shirts and I'm able to hype it up a little bit more. I'll have like a couple week time period where people can order off the Bonfire website, and then after that time period, then the company they print it up and they send it out to the people, so I don't have to go to the post office myself. So it's just like a one-stop shop. So it takes a couple weeks, but the quality is really good. I really like the quality, of it and everything. So
awesome. I wish you well, Mike. But I thought you were going to have nipples showing on your shirt, though.
That could be a future idea, but I wanted to just go with something. Me and Kevin gave me that idea. You never know. I can work with something and do something custom in the future. But for right now, I figured I would go with that shirt.
Yeah.
Hey, before we let you guys go, I just wanted to add one more thing, that with our cigar rest, I don't know if you could really tell, but we offer it for a higher quantity, a stamped finish, where we'll build the die for your custom logo. But for a smaller quantity, let's say 25 and up, we could also get them laser engraved, and you'll get a darker logo on there.
I see that. That's nice. Now, what are they retailing for?
So on our website, we sell them for $9.90 or $12.99.
Okay, what does it cost if you were, say, you were a Stogie Press company and you needed to order 500 of them? What are they? Something like that.
Well, if you're Stogie Press, you might get a little better deal, But.
So for the stamp version, there's a set price to build the stamp, but then after that, it could be as low as $1.90 a prop with your custom logo on it.
Right, because they just run that extra process.
Right. And then for these, I think it's under $10 if you get 25. Obviously depending on the detail on the logo, it's right around under $10 for 25, and then as you buy more, obviously the price comes down.
We want to thank you guys.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for being on.
Yeah.
Again, people, www.cigarmedics.com. Check it out. This is a device you want to have. You'll enjoy it. Uses for it. Thank you, Team CigarMedics.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for all the support, okay?
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guys.
If you like this video and like to see more Stogie Press productions and taking it to the nub shows, please subscribe to our Stogie Press YouTube channel.